hello.
Hello.
We are back. So welcome everybody. So today on Containers from the Couch, I know it's actually been a few weeks since we've been on, but today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts, and I know Austin can attest to that. But we're going to be talking about the AWS Copilot CLI. And specifically, we're going to be doing some fun things with a lot of the new features that we've added to the Copilot CLI over the past few weeks, past month, maybe month and a half. We've done so much just in a short period of time that it's actually really exciting, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. So before we get into it, let's start with just a quick introduction. I know folks have probably seen you here before, Austin, but why don't you do a quick intro and say hello?
Hey, my name's Austin. I'm a software engineer on the Copilot team at Amazon. I'm on the ECS developer experience team. We publish Copilot. We're responsible for a few other DevX things in the ECS org, but my focus has been Copilot all the time for the last year or so. We've published 2 or 3 releases in the last month and a half, like Adam was saying, and we have a lot of stuff to dive into. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Yes, thank you. And I have to tell you, the Copilot team is just so involved in the community, and we really take, I'll tell you, customer feedback very seriously. You can check out the documentation on GitHub. If you run into any problems, or you want to talk to the team, oftentimes open up a GitHub issue. There's also I pronounce it jitter, but I think it's Gitter. I don't know. It's GIF. But just another place where you can reach out, and if you have any questions on Copilot, to just interact with folks that are using it. And again, the team is super helpful. Frankly, this is one of the best teams I've ever worked with. So it's always a good experience. So Austin, tell us, what are we going to do today? What type of damage are we going to be causing?
All right. So today we are going from 0 to WordPress in about 20 minutes. We're going to deploy a production-ready WordPress site running on Amazon ECS in 2 separate environments, which including an EFS file system for persistence, themes, WordPress content, an RDS serverless Aurora cluster in the background, and an HTTPS because we're using a domain name. So we're gonna use this as an opportunity to look at some of the new features we've published in Copilot, and sort of share a demo or a reference for how to actually get up and running with WordPress on ECS using Copilot.
Yes, and I'll say so. I've experienced deploying WordPress sites in the past, and I think there's 2 ways you can do it. There's the really easy way, which is just, maybe I have like a VPS, or like you go to Lightsail, I just get my container up and running, and I'm good. But then there's the kind of the other end of the spectrum, where it's like, I need a lot of customization. There's a lot I want to do. I want to have more control over my WordPress environment. And I would say that gap between the two, it's a large leap to really get from point A to point B. So, we've talked about Copilot. It greatly simplifies the process of just deploying your containers to AWS. Austin, why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about what Copilot is and why it's something that I talk about so much, and why I love it so much.
Yeah, so Copilot is an opinionated CLI, which aims to be the best and easiest way to get containerized services running on ECS. So basically, if you have a Docker file, or you have a container image published somewhere that you'd like to use, Copilot will take that image from just sitting idle in a repository to deployed live on ECS behind an application load balancer in multiple subnets across multiple AZs in about 15 minutes. So we aim to make the experience as simple and easy as possible. It's a simple Copilot init to get up and running. And by the time your environment's done deploying, you will have a fully functioning, redundant ECS service.
Yeah. And I, we say production ready. This is the reality. You know, when you think about having to build all of these things on your own, you have to think about the networking components. There's a VPC, right? I have to create that. I have to think about routing tables. If I want to run everything, in private subnets, I have to start thinking about NAT gateways. I have to think about security groups, IAM roles policies. The list goes on and on. So Copilot does all of these things that we've learned over the years as, good practices. And Copilot, that's the opinion, is we take all these good practices that we know based on how our customers are doing things and, just how we, advise our customers to run their environments. We do all that for you. So you just literally say, hey, here's my great container, here's my code, and just take it and make it production ready.
Yeah, in a sense, what Copilot does is create architecture as code, because with our service patterns, we have, these opinionated defaults for a load balanced web service, say, that traffic from the internet can reach. We have we have a service template for a backend service, which is reachable within your cluster or within your VPC by other services. We have scheduled job functionality, which lets you in one line get a cron job running in your cluster with built-in retries and timeout.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff adds up to essentially being able to define the architecture at the highest possible level without worrying about any of the networking or IAM details.
Yeah, which is really amazing. So let's what do you say let's get right into it and let's see what we've got.
Yeah, why not? So what we've got going right now, I have already done some of the heavy lifting here, but let me just start typing some commands here. So where am I? I got to set my AWS profile.
Cool. And if you're in the chat and you have questions, please feel free to sound off. We'll take questions live.
Yeah. So what I've already done here is I've already set up a Copilot application, which is just done with Copilot app init. And I've linked it to a domain name that we've registered in this account, ghostpilot.biz. Those of you who are longtime watchers may remember this from last October, where we deployed a Halloween app to count up the number of emojis that were tweeted under the AWS Copilot hashtag and display that info as a front-end service. That was our last major appearance on this show, but we're reusing that domain for this tutorial today, or this show. So what I've done is I've set up an application, and then I have set up two environments. You can see in the app show response here, we have test and prod, which are set up right now in the same region and the same account, but we make it very easy to deploy these cross account. So let me go ahead and dig into one of these environments a little bit more. Oops. Look at the test environment here. This is you can see that I've already got a service deployed. We'll come back to that in a second. So what we want to do here is go from nothing. I have a Docker file over here. You can see on the right side of my screen. From a Docker file to a WordPress installation. So we're going to go ahead and do a Copilot storage init, because what we need to do is we need to set up an RDS database for our WordPress installation. So let me go ahead and list off this directory.
While you do that, so when you deploy a WordPress site, you need a database, MySQL, relational database. And generally, it's a good practice to have a shared file system, as you mentioned earlier, Austin, that for your themes, especially as your containers scale out, you want to be able to read those same files to serve the same content across all your containers. And so this is a feature we added specifically to add an RDS Aurora serverless database. I think it was a release or two ago. And what this is going to do is this is going to create an Aurora serverless RDS instance for you, right?
This is going to create, this uses a feature of Copilot called additional resources. So this is going to create a CloudFormation template representing an Aurora serverless database with all of the networking set up already to communicate with your front-end service. So what I've done here is I have run Copilot storage init. I've selected that I want to associate it with my front-end service. I want to create an Aurora serverless cluster named WP. I'm going to use MySQL. I'm going to name this initial database main. So as you can see, this has spit out some info about what's been done. It wrote a CloudFormation template at this path in the Copilot directory /frontend/add-ons, and gives you some information on how we get that data into the container. So whenever you run storage init, we inject some information like resource name or its endpoint into the container that you deploy as an environment variable. So once our containers are up and running, we can access a lot of useful information about this database cluster from this environment variable, WP secret. It's stored in JSON, so you can access the database username, the host that your containers need to query to connect to the database, the table name, the administrator password, and the port that the cluster communicates on. And all of that's just automatically injected into your container environment.
And going back to building on good practices, it's good practice to expose environment specific type values as environment variables to your container or in your task. But it's not great to just hard code secrets into your task definition if you were to do this outside of Copilot. So what are we doing here to avoid that?
Yeah, so what I've done here is I've opened up the generated CloudFormation template, and you can see that there is this outputs field where we output the secret value. And what happens here is that Copilot does a little bit of magic whenever you deploy a service that contains additional resources, in that we look through your outputs, we check if there are any secrets, and we will inject the contents of those secrets into your manifest without you actually ever having to hard code any of that data. ECS has a native integration with Secrets Manager, which lets us pull down data via the ECS agent and populate that data into your container's environment without you having to store it in source control or ever have to touch it or expose it in your terminal.
And so, on that note, a question did come up in the chat. So they asked, the tech guy asked, is the password stored in Secrets Manager?
Mm-hmm. It is.
And then the next question was, what if we need to change the password?
Yeah, so you can change it in via Secrets Manager. If you update the secret through that API, then the password will change. You may have to redeploy your containers because secret values are populated at container startup. But if you modify the secret value through the console or the command line, can change that way. We are in the process of trying to figure out how to add automatic secret rotation to these database clusters. But that'll be coming in a future release.
Yeah, so it sounds, and you got a little choppy there, but I think the majority of it was clear enough that you absolutely can change the password. So the way it works with Secrets Manager and ECS, as Austin explained, is, and Austin, I'd say feel free to if you want to push this environment out and get it started. But the Secrets Manager obviously stores the password. If you were, if this wasn't WordPress and say it was your own custom, code you were writing, you could absolutely dynamically pull that secret and have some sort of try catch where if the secret's different, your code could just re-pull that new secret, re-log into the database and reestablish that connection. But in this case, we're pulling that secret from the environment variable. So what you'd want to do is redeploy the task. You just redeploy the service, and then it would pull down that latest secret on the next deploy. Run those tests.
Exactly. So I've just run a Copilot service deploy to push this service up to the prod environment. And what this is going to take some time because we have to create an RDS cluster, a secret, a parameter group, and there are a few issues with eventual consistency, which cause the CloudFormation for this database cluster to take about 10 minutes to deploy. So you can see right now it's just building my Docker container and pushing it up to ECR. Then we'll see a CloudFormation deploy start up with a nice visualization. But in the meantime, while this happens, we can go through the manifest to see what exactly is going to be deployed here. So we saw that I did a Copilot storage init to create the add-ons template for this RDS database. But if you look over here in my right pane, I'm looking at the manifest for this service, which we're going to push out. And we can just go through some of these fields to see what exactly we've done to ready this for WordPress.
And by the way, Austin, so one thing to mention is the manifest, when you initialize your service, that manifest gets created. Copilot will create it for you.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
If it's your first time, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, we have we've streamlined a few things just so that we can get this going as quickly as possible. But yeah, when you run Copilot service init, we create a manifest here for you. We try and infer the port that your service listens on by reading your Docker file. We set up some basic networking and the CPU count and memory fields. So you'll notice here, let me just go ahead and pop this over here while this is going on in the background. So you notice under the health check, I've customized this a little bit to define what success looks like, the interval and timeout, healthy and unhealthy thresholds. And I've set stickiness to true, which I believe uses a cookie to make sure that you're always hitting the same container instance when you view the website through a browser. I've set up the container image to be built from this Docker file and listen on port 8080. And the real fun stuff is down here in the storage field and below. So this is one of the features that we just released. As Adam was saying, one of the essential components of WordPress is that you have an EFS file system, some kind of persistent storage in order to store uploaded themes, plugins, user content, static files like that. So WordPress needs persistence, and by default, ECS Fargate, which is what Copilot uses under the hood, doesn't really enable that. Your containers come up, they get provisioned 20 or more gigabytes of storage, and then when the containers go down, that disappears. But what we've just released in 1.6 of Copilot is the ability to add these managed EFS file systems to your environments. So what I'm doing in the storage key here is I'm defining a volume that is going to be called WordPress user data. It's going to be located at the path var www.html wp content, since that's where WordPress expects this to be. And I've set this EFS key to true. Now, what this is going to do under the hood is when I deploy this service, it's going to create an EFS file system at the environment level. It's going to create a mount point in that file system, or an access point in that file system, which only this service has permission to access. And so you don't have to manage any complicated POSIX user rules. All of the access is controlled by IAM. And by default, services have their own dedicated directory in the shared cluster level EFS file system. So previously, you could share task level storage between your containers, but what this does is it allows you to share service level storage between your tasks using an EFS volume.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So in case because maybe that could be confusing to some. So what you're saying is, when I talk about a service, the idea, an ECS service is to maintain a desired state, right? A desired count of tasks running at all times, or to auto scale those task counts to meet a certain demand.
Yes.
So what you're saying here is this is shared across. So if my service scales out, it's automatically going to be able to mount to this file system, network file system, automatically through EFS.
Yeah, exactly. Every service or every task that comes up is going to mount this directory, and this is going to map to a specific folder in the EFS file system. So everything that your tasks have already put in that directory is going to be available to new copies as they come up.
Awesome. And, so there are some questions about EFS. And I do want to mention to the folks in the audience that I believe on the 17th, we're going to have a show where we're going to have the EFS product managers on the show. And we're actually going to dive really deep into EFS integrations with our container services. So we will get into that. But there was a question for a link to this repo. I will share that as well.
Yeah, nice. So I've set that repo up in just my personal GitHub, and I followed the steps this morning. It should be 100% complete, but if you run into an issue, don't hesitate to cut an issue on the repo with any questions that you have if you try and follow that tutorial.
Perfect.
All
and
right.
By the way, we have a test environment up and running, right?
Yeah, we do.
Cool, continue.
Yeah, we do have a test environment already up and running. I wanted to just run through the storage section real quick to make sure that everyone knew exactly how we were going to enable a persistent file system behind all this. So we can actually go over here and check out this test environment. Because we added the domain here, this is accessible at fe.test.wordpress.ghostpilot.biz. If you want to link that in the chat, our viewers can check out the website and see what's going on. So this is a fully functioning test environment. This service is serving Copilot, backed by EFS. I've logged in as the administrator here. What I felt we could do while we wait for this other environment to deploy is we can, let's go ahead and create a new blog post and maybe install a theme. So,
and that I feel like you're going there, Austin, but the tech guy did ask, so when all the tasks are destroyed, does the EFS storage get destroyed? So now I feel like this question could be related to if you were to destroy your environment, but let's take it with the context of, before we go there, let's talk about the context of if your tasks just get killed.
Yeah, well, if your tasks get killed, then nothing will happen to your EFS storage. As long as, if you delete your service or if you delete your environment, then the EFS will disappear. But if you don't delete the service, then everything that you've stored in the EFS will persist. If your tasks fail, if they get cycled down, if they just have a hiccup and get recycled, none of your data persistence will be lost. So let's see here. So I just published a blog post. You can see it's now turning up on the front page. And also, while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and install a theme.
And so, Austin, if I remember correctly, with WordPress, when I install a theme, that's going to install into that shared file system. And when I write a blog post, that inserts into that database that we initialize, right?
Yeah, I believe that's how it works. Let's go ahead and install this like global travel theme.
I like it. Where are we going?
Let's see what happens. I guess we'll find out.
And so one other thing really quick is, you talked about the domain, but so you had a custom domain and you simply just initialized, when you were initializing your application, you said, here's my domain, and Copilot did all the work.
Exactly. I just, all I did was Copilot app init.
That's awesome.
Copilot.biz, because that domain already existed in the account that I ran this command with. And so Copilot just looked for the hosted zone, or looked for the domain, created a hosted zone, provisioned an ACM certificate from Amazon Certificates Manager. And you can see that we're running on HTTPS because of that.
So it provisioned a cert with Amazon Certificate Manager. It does all of this work for you.
Exactly.
These are the things that just bring me so much joy. As someone who in my past life, I built and managed these environments, it's just, it really does bring me a lot of joy. So where are we at?
All right. So we have just made some changes to our WordPress site in the test environment. And what I want to do is I actually want to go to the ECS console and kill some of these tasks. So the tech guy, we're gonna put this to the test here. So I'm looking at my cluster for the test environment. I'm just going to look at all the tasks here, right? So we have a service running, which is going to, with a desired count of 2. So if I stop these tasks, the service is going to see that there are no tasks available and spawn new ones. So that means that anything that's stored in the containers file system is going to be lost. But since we created an EFS volume for all of that persistent storage, we shouldn't see any change in our website. It may be unavailable for a brief second, but what I've done here is I've stopped both the tasks that were running. And
so if we were to refresh the page, it would,
it
wouldn't work. But that's, obviously this is like, scenario where, oops, I went in there, I killed all my containers. Oh no, what have we done? I just wrote this amazing blog post. I installed this really cool theme. Is it all gone? Well, I don't think so.
No. We're gonna look at the Copilot service status here. This is one of our operational commands we provide, and you can see that even though I just killed those tasks, there are already 2 new ones that are in the provisioning status. So in just a little while, these are going to switch over to pending and then running.
And so so Copilot deploys these containers using Fargate, which is serverless compute to run your containers without having to manage the underlying EC2. So, I mean, there's really like, from a management perspective, I was just thinking your Aurora, MySQL database is serverless. There's no database to manage there.
Right.
EFS is managed. I mean, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I have to ask this because I saw it in your if you can go back to your terminal.
Sure.
And just so if we can see here under capacity provider, I see Fargate spot.
That
Austin,
is true.
What does that mean?
That means that these tasks are launched on the Fargate spot capacity provider, as it seems. But what that means is that they're running at half the cost of normal Fargate containers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but spot instances is a concept that we originally got from EC2, where if in times where instances have been brought up and then tasks have been killed on them, there's a spot marketplace for these sort of spare EC2 instances that are running, and you can get them at a deeply discounted price from the normal on-demand pricing. So we brought that to Fargate, And now in our last release, we brought that to Copilot, where you can request that your task be run on Fargate Spot. And the pricing is, I think, about half the price of on-demand Fargate tasks. But I specified this in my manifest. This is one of our new features that we just released in 1.6. Under the count field, you can see that I'm overriding this in the test environment so that there will be 2 copies launched on Spot. Now, if there aren't actually capacity available to fill that, then there may be less than 2 tasks running. But that seems rare. This has been running all morning and hasn't had any availability drop.
Yeah, and I think so. Generally, with Spot, the idea is, with any excess capacity, you can take advantage at a pretty substantial cost savings, and I think it's actually up to like 70% cost savings.
Wow.
So when you think about it, with your test environments, it seems kind of silly to not run them as in Spot. Especially if you need them up and running often. You want to keep them long running. So the idea is run at a fraction of the cost, but you're still getting the same resources. It's just you run the risk of, if capacity runs low and AWS needs to reclaim that capacity, you get a 2-minute window, and then your containers are shut down until more capacity is available. So, but again, pretty rare.
Huh. This is interesting.
We broke it. And
no, did I break it? Sure hope not. Well, it looks like the dashboard's still working, and it seems like my blog post has been persisted.
Yep.
I have my Hello Copilots.
Yeah, there it is.
Let's where can I find this post? Let's check it out. Ooh, interesting. It looks like looks like the theme directory got corrupted. Maybe I have the wrong directory mounted for WordPress content.
Interesting. Yeah, so this was something we may not have. So the good news is, you know what? Why don't we exec in?
Oh yeah, let's check that out. Yeah, let's diagnose this.
And so this was another feature we released. So we released ECS exec, which is a way to essentially shell into your containers without the need for SSH and so on. So Copilot on day 1, when we released ECS exec, Copilot had that as well. So this is a way for you to enter in your container, and if you need to troubleshoot, you can do it live and see what's happening in real time here.
Yeah. So let's see here. So let's so I've just CD'd into the HTML directory where the EFS volume is mounted in WP content. Ooh, interesting.
Looks like we didn't mount like we thought.
Oh.
Well, this earns the honorary show banner. Doing a live banner.
Oh yeah, is that? All right. Well, we can at the very least switch our theme back.
Yeah. And so just while you're working on that, so again, when we talk about ECS exec and execing into your containers, it's generally recommended that you don't just do this in production. You don't do it every day. Generally, the idea is, hey, if something's wrong, this is a way to access your containers, break glass scenario where you need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Does anyone happen to know where the WP themes directory is located in this installation? It's been a while since I've actually I'm
going to Google it too.
Yeah.
and let's see
Please
if
do.
the audience can beat me to it. Um,
Yeah.
And so there was a question. So when you exec into the Fargate pod, so how is it picked? Is it random? And could you select where you actually exec into?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, it's random. If you look at the service exec workflow here, when you follow this, when you follow the wizard, it gives you a choice of what service to use. And for the time being, right now, it'll just pick a random container. But you look at the help menu.
You can do a task ID, I believe.
Yeah, you can do a task ID. And if you have more than one container running, you can pick a container. So let's look at our service status command to get a container ID or a task ID. It looked like we exec'd into 3908 first. So let's do. Yeah, I just specified the first 7 digits of the task ID. Copilot figured out which one I meant. And now we're in the other task.
Yep. So I think, Robert Tables, Bobby Tables is funny, brings up a point that, I think it should be random for now. And if you need to pick a specific one, that seems like a smell that your containers are not running idempotently. And I think that's a good point. However, I will say that there can be times where you just have, you have one particular container that's just one-off, throwing, weird errors, but it at least gives you an opportunity to dive in to see exactly what's going on that particular task.
Yeah, exactly.
Or container, sorry.
So it's random, but we give you the chance to pick the specific task ID. And say you're running Nginx or Envoy as a sidecar in your service, we can actually let you exec into that container as well.
Yeah, so very common to, you may want to sidecar something to your main container that's running. So, in a task definition, you can have multiple containers running. So if somehow your service mesh sidecar wasn't working, or it was a logging sidecar and something wasn't working as you expect, you could just exec into that container to see what's going on too.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like our prod environment's done deploying here.
Fantastic.
Which means that we can check out this other URL, fe.prod.wordpress.ghostpilot.biz. And you can see that this is a fresh website. It doesn't have the blog post that I just published because that uses a separate database and these tasks are running in a separate cluster in VPC. But everything else is completely identical. So we can see that if we can log in here. And if we go back to the manifest, you can see some things that I've done here.
Let's see. I think. Okay, so I was just looking, and it looks like the themes directory is under WP Content Themes.
Interesting.
Content themes, so I would say this is just us not being experts in WordPress.
Yeah, that's.
But so I think that maybe took 12 minutes. It deployed a database. It deployed our cluster, our entire environment, our networking, everything that we needed: security groups, load balancer, certificates, domain, CNAME, etc. All in that span of 12 minutes while you and I were chatting. And now we come back and we have a production environment. It's running in multiple availability zones, and it's ready to roll.
Yeah, exactly. So if we look at our service status command, you can see that we've now got we've got 2 tasks running on Fargate at the moment. So if you check out what I did in the manifest here, I've set a minimum range or minimum auto scaling range of 2. And if that container starts getting overloaded with traffic, it'll scale up to a maximum of 10 copies of that task. But if you look down here in this spot from field, after 5 tasks, or after 5 copies are active, or after 4 copies are active, we'll start trying to place those new tasks on Fargate Spot. So you can get a great balance using this Fargate Spot integration for cost and performance with your auto scaling.
Absolutely. And it's just, this is one of those features that to me, this is just so considerate because, you shouldn't be, uh-oh, did I disconnect? Am I here? Okay.
I hear you.
I think I'm here. Okay. I'm sorry. But if you're comfortable and confident in your deployment and how you've built your application, it's okay to integrate a little spot in there, especially if you're okay with some volatility. And what I like here is we're saying our baseline is 5. We want to make sure that if we scale out, we have 5 on-demand Fargate tasks running. And then, for anything beyond 5, let's save some money. And so there was a question that came in from Robert Tables, and he had mentioned, judging by the giggles, we understand the reference in his name, of course. But is Sidecar common for things like log forwarding? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And in fact, that's actually built into Copilot. Adam, if you wanted to pull up the docs on the sidecars, or I guess I can do it here.
I will share that too.
So if you scroll down to this sidecar pattern section of the document, there's actually a way to automatically configure a FluentBit logging sidecar with this logging destination field. So what this will, if you specify this in your manifest, this is a top level field here for logging destination. If you specify an image, then, well, actually, no, it seems like this, it seems like this logging key just automatically uses a FluentBit sidecar.
Yeah, and the idea here is so by default we log to CloudWatch logs, and metrics are in CloudWatch as well. But if you wanted to, if you have Splunk or some other logging, Elasticsearch, whatever, we're S3, this would be a common pattern to add the sidecar to help route those logs to where you want them to go. So very common pattern.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so common that we decided we needed a separate top level field other than the sidecars director or sidecars field to handle it.
That's fantastic. There was a question, can you scale back to 0 when 0 traffic, from the tech guy?
We don't currently support scale to 0. That's a story that I know that we have a lot of requests for, and I think we're definitely going to investigate it, but I don't think we have any specific roadmap for it. If you want to create a GitHub issue or see what other people are saying, that will really help us prioritize and understand what our customers want and what we should build next.
And so FA is in the chat, and he chimed in saying you can update the manifest, you set count to 0, Copilot deploy, and this would essentially pause your service. So you could basically have 0 tasks running and then, set those back up to whatever number you desire.
Yeah, but I don't think that you can set the auto scaling minimum to 0. I don't think that that's currently supported yet in ECS.
Yeah. So yeah, correct. Yeah. So this is more of a, right. You would just tone it, set it to 0 and more statically.
Right.
Okay. So, wow. So let's do a quick recap for folks that may just be joining us. We got about another 10 minutes left, but we started with, we had a test environment. We wanted to just show that just for the sake of time. We with Copilot, we had that test environment deployed. We then deployed a production environment. With Copilot, we created an RDS database, Aurora serverless. We created an EFS network file share, and all the stuff we've talked about. Load balancer, all these things that we needed, Copilot did on our behalf. And so all we did was just talk through all those cool things that it built while it was building in the background. So yeah. I like that you're doing some operational stuff too. Maybe do you want to talk a little bit about how you would, so now you have a production, you have a test environment. How do you interact between the different services and the different environments and so on?
Yeah, so Copilot provides a suite of operational commands. So you can see that I've just run Copilot service logs that lets you track the logs of any of your deployed services. I've specified an environment flag to see what's going on in the test environment. And you can see here on the left that this will show you what service and what specific task generated this log. It tells you the HTTP request, and we also even have a follow flag here, which will just track in the terminal whenever there's a new request. Adam, do you want to visit or hard refresh the Copilot test website?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, look, and there we go. We've just got another Git coming in, and the logs that we're following just updated.
Nice.
Yeah, so this gives you great visibility into what exactly is happening in your service. I think it looks like we've had a comment or a comment reply.
Oh,
let's check out the Hello World blog post.
Let's be careful. I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know.
At any rate, right? We don't necessarily want to.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. We don't know what's on the World Wide Web.
So there was a question. Did we use from the tech guy? Did we use RDS proxy when connecting to Aurora serverless? Did we set that up?
No, I'm honestly not entirely sure what RDS proxy is. This basically has just passed in the database endpoint as an environment variable that WordPress knows how to understand. And WordPress is handling all of the database connections. There's not an RDS proxy configuration set up.
Yeah. And that's just for like connection pooling. And so that was a feature we released, I want to say at last reInvent, maybe even longer. But anyway, if it's something, that's another example of something, feature request, GitHub, what's your use case, put it in there and the team will look at it.
Yeah. And if you have an immediate use case for it, the great thing about everything that's generated by storage in it is that it's just dumped into a CloudFormation template in the add-ons directory. So if you know the CloudFormation and you know exactly how you want to configure this serverless cluster, you can add the proxy configuration to the created database resource.
That's fantastic. And yeah, it's just, I think the chat's talking about connection pooling. This is common practice, I guess, in the Lambda world as well, as you have just a lot of connections coming in. But someone did mention in the chat, it was back up there, but we should do a show where we talk about and we dive into add-ons with Copilot. So yeah. Because it seems like there's some questions around, when I want to, expand beyond what Copilot does, how do I do that? And that's where add-ons comes in. So I definitely think we should do a show. Do you want to briefly touch on add-ons though, a little bit?
Yeah. So add-ons are basically just CloudFormation templates. We have on our website this whole page describing the concept of additional resources. So we anything anything that you want to add to a particular service, you can add as its own little self-contained template in the add-ons directory. There are these parameters that get passed down um, from the Copilot service and environment stacks that are things like the application environment and workload name. And then you just set up whatever resources you want. And there are a few like sort of magic use cases here, where if you want to attach an IAM policy to your task role, then all you have to do is output it. And for instance, here, this managed access policy will get attached to the task role when the service is deployed. We do similar things with secrets, and any resource that you output is also going to get injected as an environment variable. So say you want to output a secret, that secret will get pulled down by the ECS agent and populated into the environment at container startup. So no matter how many of these templates you have in the add-ons directory, Copilot will merge them all into a single CloudFormation template and deploy them as one stack, one nested stack underneath the service template. And so like we're making this easier every day to troubleshoot and use and debug these add-ons. But they're a really great way of adding additional IAM capabilities to your service, of adding any AWS resource that we don't like natively effortlessly support in Copilot. You can create using an add-on, and it's a great way of managing like Elasticache infrastructure or a really customized database, or an S3 bucket. In fact, that's how we, with storage in it, all we do is we create add-on templates that we know work using best practices for S3, Dynamo, or Aurora.
Yeah. And, just with the add-ons, that again, it's that thoughtful understanding of that if you need to access a resource. So if it's an IAM policy, you want to add an IAM policy, you output that policy ARN. Copilot is smart enough to actually attach that ARN, that policy, that role policy, forgive me,
yeah,
to your ECS task. So it's recommended when you're running, containers using ECS, what you want to do is you don't want to just grant, blanket access to the world. You want to be very narrow with your permissions and scope them. And so you can specifically attach these policies to your task role that are very granular. So it handles all that for you. You just say, here's my policy, here's the ARN, you do the rest. Yeah.
And you can read a lot more about any of the stuff that we've talked about during this show on our docs website, which I pulled up here. aws.github.io/Copilot CLI has a great sort of getting started experience, as well as some deep dives on the add-ons templates, on sidecars, on storage like EFS, and databases using storage init. And if you can't find what you need in the documentation, feel free to cut us an issue on GitHub or reach out on Gitter, or ping us on Twitter. We're very responsive across as many channels as we can find.
Yes.
The best places to reach us are definitely GitHub and Gitter.
Yeah. Does anyone call it jitter, or is that just me?
I think that's just you, Adam.
I'm just weird. Okay. Yeah, I think we should probably wrap at this point. So this video will be available at containersfromthecouch.com, which is our YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch this video, and then we shared that the repo, we're going to take this repo and we're going to move it under the AWS Containers organization. So we'll have an architecture diagram and some other things to go along with it. So in the meantime, let's see, there was go through a couple more comments, and then we'll we'll wrap up. But yep, Rohit said, "Wow, it looks like YAML's taking over the world now." YAML's popular. I think the key here is simplicity, though, and it's not a lot of YAML, but you get a heck of a lot of resources with that small amount of YAML. And the other thing is Copilot has a guided experience. So remember that Copilot, you don't have to just have a manifest and deploy. You can walk through the Copilot CLI to get exactly what you need. And then there was one last question. Oh, and by the way, on top of that, if you prefer to be more, hands-on in your environments and you want less opinion from us and you want to have all the opinion, there's CloudFormation, Terraform. There's also the CDK where you can get also the best of both worlds. You can have opinionated as well as override those opinions with what you want as well. The tech guy asked if there were any videos based on like for event-based Fargate tasks. Which we do have. Reach out to me on Twitter. We do have some shows in the Containers from the Couch channel as well, though, that I can share with you. But I think that's it. We should wrap. There's another show coming up after us. Austin, it was super awesome to have you on. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, and by the way, our Twitters are, if you just see below our names.
Yeah.
Below our faces, I should say. Those are our Twitter handles. But Austin, thank you. You are super awesome. And the Copilot team, you're all super awesome. So yeah.
Nice. Adam, thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.
It was definitely fun. So we will see y'all soon. Thanks so much.